All right, we will go ahead and have our panelists give a quick introduction. They're going to let us know who they are, who they're with, and just a quick pathway in the industry and within the industry that they've had.
Good morning. My name is Carla Nugent, and I'm one of the founding partners and Chief Revenue Officer of Wayfield Group Contracting. We're a commercial and industrial electrical contractor. Started in construction, my second job out of college with a distribution company where we were building our own facilities, training centers, and stores in a 4-state region. Ended up then with a data center company that was building in-house construction, 18 data centers internationally and also across the U.S. Brought us to 9/11, which stopped a lot of that mission-critical work, but was the catalyst for us to start our company. So now we're on our 24th year in business, Colorado homegrown, and been blessed to have great people, have expanded into 8 offices amongst 4 different states and employed about 1,000 people.
Good morning. Dan Rondinelli, Construction Mastery Institute. Started as a construction laborer back in 1985 and been building buildings my whole career, and then pivoted and did a little transition into a teaching and training business. Did that full time starting in 2021, and so have worked for a handful of general contractors and built some cool projects, carry a Class A contractor's license, and the Construction Mastery Institute serves as a platform to help transfer those retiring leaders, construction leaders that we talked about, to the next generation, and we'll learn about that in a little bit. Glad to be here.
Morning. My name is Scott Schenefeld. I'm with FCI Constructors. First off, I'm extremely glad to be here and be part of this. Wasn't sure what I was getting into, and I'm definitely not a speaker. I'm a builder, so bear with me. I was very fortunate enough to graduate CSU with a CM degree a long time ago. I graduated in '93, got a job with Roach Construction out of Greeley the day before I graduated. Spent almost 30 years there and tried to retire. That didn't work. Ended back up with FCI the last 3 or 4 years, so extremely glad to be with FCI now. Obviously, I don't regret anything I've ever done, the decisions I made, and glad to be here today. Thank you.
I'm Mike Trotter. I'm with Front Range Roofing Systems. I came into the industry in '95 with another commercial roofing contractor. We purchased Front Range in 2001, and always with transition in mind. And I've just been doing the roofing thing for that time. So we'll talk about transition.
Yeah, and then I'll go in. Nick Kofel. So I'm the current president of Front Range Roofing Systems and took over in May from Mike. So we've been part of that kind of transition and what that looks like, and hopefully can contribute a little bit to that. But I started on the roofing side as a laborer and then switched over to the sheet metal side, and I was doing that for a long time. And then, yeah, it's been an exciting journey, and I don't think I ever was thinking construction young. It was just something on the side that was fun, and yeah, it finds you. So yeah, it's been good.
So this topic of the master builder, Nick opened us up and alluded to that, but years and years ago, it was a craft, and oftentimes it was architects that were known as the master builder, and they would have these, black swan projects that would be this pinnacle of their career, but they really were a master of their craft. They understood how everything went together. They were teaching and mentoring people. So that's where that term, the master builder, comes from. I know within our organization, we talk about it quite a bit of, that's the way we want to get back to, right? These people, that these are honorable careers, that they work their entire careers in this industry. So with that being said, we all know what it's like to have somebody show up on a job site that is underqualified. Maybe they don't have the right tools, they don't have the right training to perform it. Maybe it's somebody who's newly promoted, walking in and think they know everything, and they're right out of college. I know I was probably that annoying person on a job site once, but coming out thinking that they know what they're doing. And there's people that have been on the job site doing that since before we were born. And, they're just thinking, who are you walking in? So, Scott, I want you to open us up and talk about, you've probably dealt with a lot of those people. I know you were general super for a long time. Talk to us about what that's like and how you've been able to really start to mentor and pass that knowledge on to those people.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's I think us older people, right? It's hard to have patience with younger people coming in that maybe don't know anything, but it's definitely having the patience and taking the time with them. I think my biggest thing, or my time, is more leading by example. So not that I do anything right or have done anything right, but I think I know a few things and try to pass that on just by how I do it. I learn from others, watching others, and I'm not a master of any piece of the work that goes into a building. I learn watching others work and what's good, what's bad, or from other superintendents that what they did wrong or right, took that, and try to pass that on to the younger people. So that's my way of doing it, is leading by example. As I get older, obviously snuck up on me, these type of situations, right, is a good way. FCI does a ton of, we have a lot of younger people, so training meetings monthly and weekly, showing them or telling them the ways that we have put things together. But I think the best way is to come and work in the field, right? You got to get your feet wet, start off with some of the grunt work, and build up from there. So
how are you able to leave a job to go to your next one? Maybe it's not quite done yet, and you're having to leave an assistant super or a younger superintendent on the job site. How do you know that they're ready? How do you feel good as that parent of sorts of that person walking away?
well, I think it's definitely you got to have a good feel for them, right? That they're kind of following some of the things that you've taught them, and it's definitely hard for me, for sure, still today, to let somebody take my job or take a piece of it, because it's not going to be how I would do it, right? So so you have to give them faith, and let them fail somewhat, right, with your guidance, but they have to have the basics. Is they're dependable, hardworking person, right? They're gonna be there tomorrow, not show up late, not be there at all. So I think those are some of the things, knowing the schedule, what we signed up for, knowing the parties that we're building for. Then I have a confidence that I can leave them and just check in on them, or hopefully don't have to come back and they can finish the job.
Thank you. Mike and Nick, you both just went through a transition. Talk us through how that went.
We did, and I have to chuckle a little bit because Rochelle asked me for a business title. I don't really have one. I made that up on Monday, I think. As Nick and I transitioned, it became pretty obvious. We were in two different parts of the building. He's running our sheet metal operations, and I was overseeing the company. And there began to be a lot of things that I wanted him to hear and experience. So came up with a great idea and just moved him into my office so he could be there for all the quick things that happen. I didn't have to debrief. I didn't have to remember. It just became kind of a lead by committee. That worked out really good for us. I think we did that for about 6 months. I took the summer off last summer, getting him in preparation for that, we switched chairs, I guess, about 30 days before I went on a long leave, and got to the end and returned in August. And these guys they're running the show. Nick does a great job. I mean, you guys see him up here talking. I'm proud of him for what he's doing. So we're doing good.
Yeah, and I think from a transition standpoint, there's not really a playbook, and we didn't really know how we started. I think it was a group of us young leaders that were in the same room and deciding what does this look like, and what do we want it to be as Mike and one of our other leaders, transition and what that could be. And I think we decided early on, okay, let's meet. And we were, as a mentor, unofficially, I guess, relationship, mentor-mentee, and it would be weekly meetings. And it wasn't him going, here's what you need to learn. It was me going, this is what I want to learn, and what can you teach me, and asking all the questions and trying to tee it up to what do I need to know in order to do it. But I'm going to bring you the experiences that I have or the decisions that I have to make, and then let you kind of guide me on what I'm proposing we should do. So I think it was a thoughtful, and it was a longer transition that we went through. And then it was a lot about, Mike can speak to this, but it was a lot about letting go, I think, for him, and understanding and trusting what we were doing. So I think for us, as long as I was communicating the decisions that we were making and what we wanted to do, and then asking for that advice, I think he felt secure enough to say, things are going to happen, and Nick's not going to run it the way that Mike's ran it. And in the field and in the company, people, while there's a transition, they might hold on for a second of, well, Mike ran it this way. If I try and run it because I'm not him, it won't be the same. So I had to be authentic in what I was doing, and he allowed that to happen. So I think from being in the same office and being a part of the decisions to sitting down and going through the topics just as they come up. Certain things are seasonal, or certain things are once a year decisions that are being made. So some of it was patience and not trying to get too much too fast, or trying to learn it all, and understanding that for my position, I look up and it was Mike's making all the right decisions every single day, and that's why the company was successful. And then Mike would probably argue that there was a lot of wrong decisions along the way, and it was adapting and pivoting and correcting those, and having the feeling inside for me to say, I'm going to make mistakes, and what does that look like, and how do we make it better, and recognizing it and admitting to it, and leading and learning. So we call it, in what we do, a lot of it is paying tuition, and the jobs and the experiences that we have in our company, we're learning collectively. If somebody mismanaged a job because of the labor, or misordered the material, or there's a misbid, it was, where's the opportunity to learn and how to get better, and then sharing that internally. And I think from a level of how our experienced leadership was doing things, and their best practices, and taking those and modeling them around how we're doing construction. I mean, we haven't changed our business, but we've evolved it. So I think taking those steps, and really patience was the biggest thing, but communication and trust.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I could have given him all my username and passwords and just left, but you see, perfectly capable leading up to the leave. And I've had the opportunity through association work and some other stuff to spend a lot of time with guys like me. And there's a lot of people in our industry that are never going to let go. They say they're going to die at their desk. That's going to complicate a lot of the transitioning we do. When I left in May, I knew that things were going to change, and I was okay with that. That was a huge part of when I came back in August. My email box, instead of 60 to 80 emails a day, is about 4 now, which is awesome. But I had to come up, I wanted to support these guys, but I became one of those work from home people, because if I'm a strong personality, and if I'm in the building too much, Nick was going to get circumvented. So I had to really dial in how I was going to spend my time around our people.
That's really good self-awareness.
Thank you.
And it sounds like this transition it wasn't like a 3-month, like, oh, you got this, you're going to be fine. Like these conversations were happening over maybe several years.
Yeah, probably starting in 17. I had a business coach that I had start coaching some of these guys, and we started doing some really deep dive. What does transition look like? And just building the future management team, and that was really helpful. So it took that much time. And then in the middle, COVID hits and all the fun stuff that went along with that.
Carla, you mentioned that Wayfield has really tried to pull these conversations forward and start to have conversations about people's retirement sooner. And I loved what you said when we were preparing. You said people are afraid to talk about retirement, and we're trying to change that stigma. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, we have a lot of transition going on in our industry, and we know we have knowledge leaving and retiring, but we also have churn as far as retention, right? Just within the electrical industry nationwide, we have 7,000 new electricians coming into the industry every year and 10,000 leaving. So it's like that's not all retirement. So we've kind of two things going on. But around retirement, how do we talk about it and we plan for it? And it's not like this taboo thing, and I'm not going to approach Dan because he might get offended. Let's start planning it, right? And back into that. When you're doing this one-on-one training, like you're talking and you're investing in this future generation to run work, how do you then start to replicate that? I see a lot of general supers, different leaders in our business on the operation end with all this talent, and they get connected and they're like, I'm the guy, I'm going to put the fire drills out, I'll go on the job site, I'll help. And they love that role. They're feeding into people. But how do you replicate that and say, what if you're not here? You are not going to be here one day, right? And so how does this great knowledge sustain? How do you pull that into some type of a training document? How do you create a training for multiple people? How do you train the trainer and continue it to touch more people? There's just so much technology, seat time, great stuff that we have in building all these new innovative projects, right? How do we pass that on in the next generation and not make it painful? I think, what are we learning? How do we make it better for the next folks coming in?
Our next question ties into that of what are other ways that we can effectively capture and transfer that critical knowledge that's been built up over these years without losing it? Dan, I think you've got an interesting perspective on that.
Yeah. What we're hearing from industry is, industry wants to hire attitude, and then they feel like they need to train to retain. And so really want to just kind of encourage you to do that training. And the part of that I think is important is kind of doing that needs assessment with your folks, and then reaching out, leveraging those strategic partnerships with the associations that you're involved with. So whether that's it's the alphabet soup, right? So it's either AGC, it's ABC, it's HCC, it's all the folks that have a vested interest in wanting to help you. But instead of kind of creating that curriculum or that from scratch, start leveraging those relationships that you have, and more than likely, because a lot of the backbone for my company that I co-founded was really I had this list, and I said I wish everyone on my team knew this, and I filled in this part. And so I've got a list that's got probably 50 to 70 different kind of curriculum topics, and so more than likely, if you've thought of that, it means someone else in the industry has thought about that. And then one thing that Scott mentioned that kind of triggered a memory is I started as a construction or a laborer, but left the industry as an executive, and so it was that there's a lot of people that had a hand in getting me through that, and mostly it seemed like it was from the superintendent side of the house. Certainly there was a lot of project managers that I learned from, but it seemed like the supers is where I really felt like I got a lot of that training and development. And so part of what we want to do is try to create that opportunity to not have supers just go off and ride off into the sunset, but to actually have a platform for them to be able to transition all that knowledge to that next generation. So,
anyone else? Any other thoughts? So you mentioned riding off into the sunset. I think we all joke about our retirement plans of, going to live on a beach or, all of a sudden just we're out like the Wizard of Oz or something. But there's also individuals that don't want to stop working. Thank you for your comment earlier. But there's people that want to continue to add value in the industry, want to stay in the industry, but maybe not in the same capacity. Maybe the stress has gotten to them after so many years and they're like, gosh, my body hurts, I'm done. What are other ways that we can engage professionals, and what have you guys seen?
Like I mentioned, talking about it and planning it, we saw that we were having people come to work at Wayfield Group because where they were developing and had spent many years, they weren't talking about what was next. So they're like, I don't know when the leader's going to leave. I don't know if the company might sell. I don't know what my future is. We don't talk about it. So trying to project out what do the opportunities look like. We've built a future organizational chart. What's the company going to be like in 5 years and 10 years, and show the opportunities so people can start planning and having conversation and training. You'd be surprised when you put some open positions on an org chart for the future. Conversations, people that come up and be like, I'd be really interested in that. Actually, I have some of this in my background, training, this is in my family. It's like, wow, I never would have thought of that person. We do a 3-year planning now for retirement so that we can match up that individual with folks that need to be trained. We get that knowledge transfer and have it planned out. We're still learning what that looks like, but that 3 years goes really fast. It's nice to see then every leader that we have within the company, we're having conversations with who are you feeding into, who's next in line, who are you developing, not just one person, multiple people, so that we're always looking at this and it's tied into our training. I think we've gotten really creative around some of our field leaders that have spent a lot of time with us and have started having conversations of like, I think I'm done running work and I might get my real estate license and kind of retire and make good money. I'm like, wait, why don't you make good money, stay in our industry? You know electrical, you love electrical, why don't you sell electrical? They're like, I didn't know I could do that. Why don't you come in pre-construction? Those of you that remember Jim Dent, that was Jim Dent's story into pre-construction, had to learn pre-construction. Had a general super, was starting to get burnout, was doing a lot of technical, mission critical hospital work, was great with people and training. So we're like, why don't you come into prefabrication manufacturing, right? Start investing in all of our new apprentices that are coming into our program. So we've gotten really creative, and we'll talk a little bit about some more career pathing and how we map that out, because I think next generations are looking for that. What's the 1, 2 next step? How do I connect all of this into future opportunities?
Yeah, one of the things that was kind of surprising to me is just if you look up on Google right now, if you just say what's the most productive years of your life, it's actually between 60 and 70 years old. And so I just turned that big 6-0 last month, and so I kind of starting to get the hang of what the construction business about now. So it's interesting that it's almost like the last thing we want everybody to do is ride off into the sunset. We want them to actually be engaged in part of this knowledge transfer in the most productive part of their career, and they're between the 60 and 70. So the interesting thing is a little bit about the platform is it gives you this opportunity to not just we have about 14 subject matter experts, and so I get to drag some great experienced constructors off the golf course every year to come in and actually teach classes, and we call them sessions. So it's a 2 to 2.5 hour session that's real engaging. It's not only just lecture, but it's also as a work session, so that they get the learners get to actually apply some of the techniques and their best practices that they just learned. They get to put them in place right away. So the cool part about it is you don't have to ride off into the sunset. We can use you, and now there's ways to do that by leveraging those partnerships that I talked about, but also having a platform. So if you've got a class that's on the back of your mind that you really would love to teach, or something that's been really impactful to your organization, let's see if we can move the needle together and have that sort of expanded upon. So we also leverage technology, so it's not just the region. It's pretty cool that we do have quite a bit of activity in our region, thank goodness, but it's also across the country. So we have learners from basically on the Pacific Northwest all the way to Maine and Chicago down to Florida. So the cool part is we're having this conversation here, but it's a conversation that's happening across the nation. So
You brought up an interesting point too. You said, I bring in these executives that are tired or retired, and they're coming in and they're teaching. You do a project engineer boot camp, for instance. So there's an accessibility to executives that you are bringing some of these young people that they can sit in a classroom and ask questions to executives that aren't their boss. So there's not that, kind of, I don't want to ask a stupid question to this person and they're going to tell my boss and, all of that. You provide that avenue for them to be able to say, hey, that person had a 30-plus-year career in construction. I'm going to ask them about business development and ask them all my questions and connect with them later. And I thought that was a really neat perspective.
yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for reminding me about that, Alicia. So yeah, it's really cool because it's really considered kind of a safe place, so to speak. And the subject matter experts not only know their topic, but they also have a passion for the industry and passion for the next generation. And so they're sharing their contact information, and that is a safe place or space. And a lot of why we do what we do is because I had to learn it, kind of like Scott said, kind of the longhand way. And so we kind of have a saying that if I'm at the top of my career, you get to build off of the top of my career. So this is my ceiling is your floor. So if you could just build off of where I'm at, can't imagine where you'll be in, a short 35 years, as Scott said. It kind of flies pretty fast. So, yeah, it's a great opportunity for people to get guidance and mentoring and coaching, and you kind of fill in the blank. So that's a really great point.
Yeah, so I think, and another question too that we had, where does the industry need to be flexible to not just attract but retain the workforce to make them successful? So I know a lot of times it's very rigid and this is what construction looks like and this is how I've done it. Is there opportunity as far as flexibility to get more people, whether it's young people coming in, whether it's experienced people in different industries coming in? How do we get more people in the industry, and how do we keep people from burnout or from wanting to leave, and what that looks like?
I always think about the parents. In the shifting world of not everybody needs a 4-year degree, educating parents of the kids that are coming up. There's associate programs and concurrent enrollment programs in our school districts and our community colleges that feed the construction industry. This group is light years ahead of what should be going on. I mean, with Construction Con and 750 kids and what happens over there, just getting those kids involved is a great way to go about it.
Yeah, I mean, Scott, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Carla. I'm thinking about too, as you have young kids come in, and how do you have to be flexible, and what does it look like? Because the way that you came into the industry and the way that you had to learn it probably isn't the same techniques that you're using now with newer generation.
No, for sure. I mean, I try to express to lots of young people that maybe they're going to school now or not quite sure what they're going to do. I mean, there's so many different avenues, right? And it's not just being a GC like me, right? I mean, there's a million different directions they can go. And, I think of Ames has so many different programs. No offense against CSU CM program, but there's a million different CM shorter programs, maybe cost a little bit less. I saw something the other day, you probably seen it too, his Mike Rose youth initiative that he's had going on however long. I just got familiar with it the other day, but huge scholarship programs to get people involved. So kind of explaining to people there's so many different ways to get into construction. And I guess the other thing that, right, wrong, or indifferent, I mean, I think young people just need to know, they need to know what they're going to make, right? They don't care about insurance. They don't care about any of that crap, right? I mean, they want to know what they're going to get paid, or what they can be at, if you drive hard and this is where you could be 5, 10 years down the road, or at my level, what's that look like? So I don't think really young people know, or at least I never knew what the hell people were making really. And wasn't talking. I think a lot of people talk, right? What are you making? What's your hourly rate? But I never was part of that. So I think that maybe would entice a lot of people that didn't want to come to construction. I mean, it is a great career, right? And you could make these amount of dollars. So.
And I think we have to remember, right, the trades were taken out of the schools in the late 80s, and like now we've been working so hard to get back in, and we're making progress, and we now are being recognized as an in-demand work sector, a key industry that's not being outsourced. You saw even on that chart that Adam showed, right? Construction, I think, was the fourth one showing growth, so it's exciting, but how do we get that message? Because you still are battling some of the perception of like going to all these other things and maybe construction could be last, right? Because there's 20, 30, 40, 50 years plus, we've been saying, invest in yourself and do higher education. That's the only possible route for success. And now we're seeing stackable credentials, we're seeing apprenticeships, we're seeing all of these different industries move and come into the high schools. So big opportunity of how we educate. Wanted to share a little bit on Project Scale. If you're not aware of it, Northern Colorado Sector Partnership is part of it. It's just a simple construct pulling together all of the construction training we've been doing, developing all these years, and we do it well. We start to pull it in to the high school level, and we're starting to make this connection, right? So now we're teaching in 80-some high schools across the state, starting to move as an industry, talk about all these opportunities, just like you mentioned. What are all the jobs I can matriculate in, and what's the pay range? And oh my gosh, I didn't know I could make that in construction. And you're going to pay for my education, and you're going to pay for my benefits and 401k and pension and all that stuff. So how do we connect our high schools with apprenticeships, with Project Scale, which stands for Scaling Construction Access for Learners and Earners? The goal is that we're operating as an industry here in the state. We now have cross-mapped 6 different apprenticeships into the high school curriculum, and we're giving credits into the first semester of the apprenticeship to get that kind of hook into getting more people into our industry. And now we're working on wrapping up some options around an associate's degree. That's valuable for a general contractor, valuable for subcontractors or apprenticeships, so we don't lose those apprenticeship credits. We can build upon them and say, yes, parents, yes, student, yes, job seeker, industry is going to start paying for your associate's degree. And if you pay attention with what a lot of the governors are doing with the Governor's Council, our governor is actually leading that group, and I might be saying council wrong. Does anybody know the right name of that governor's national? Yes, Yvonne, thank you. And with that, they are initiating the Get Ready initiative, which is like, wow, how we're educating our students. We're not connecting jobs, employment, industries. And so how do we pull that in, do the stackable credentials, and individuals, the goal is that you get an associate's degree in high school. So it's like, yes, we're right there. So connecting all this and educating, like this is how we want to work as an industry and not in these silos. Like I'm working to steal people from this contractor, from this school, and I don't talk about it. We have, there's so many schools to cover in Colorado that I don't know that we could all cover it between employers and apprenticeships. So if you hear more about Project Scale, we have different funding through Opportunity Now, grant funding. Our sector partnerships are now connecting on different initiatives. There's so many cool things. If you're interested on more ways to be part of that, let me know. On career pathing, we were talking about if an employee doesn't know their opportunities. Research shows with the millennials and Gen Zs, especially Gen Zs, which are 2001 forward, 20-year generation there, they're expecting 80% of their education, 80% of them surveyed expect government or business to pay for their education. So it's triggering business to start to say, what's step 1, 2, 3? How can we show career paths of how people come in the company and opportunities of how they can cross-train? It's, God bless our HR teams, training teams, because it's requiring more of employers of how to show up and engage and really attract and retain that talent. So for us, we develop a chart. Most of our new employees come in as apprentices. We want that home grow opportunity to where you can go into pre-construction and the traditional operations route of running work over into estimating, prefabrication, engineering, virtual design. We then had to develop a lot of steps and education around that past our apprenticeship. We have a Wayfield University, but really walk through, because everyone's like, great, there's all this cool stuff. how do I do it? So what's the 1, 2, 3, 4? What are all the steps that are happening on top of our apprenticeship that pulls people into different trainings and opportunity into their journeyman's license? So it's a heavy lift, but I just keep going back to the data of what we see from our generations coming into the workforce is saying that they need and want this. We ended up developing a versatility matrix. So we found, again, everybody wants to have conversation about how am I moving forward and the skills that I'm, matching up. What does that look like next? What am I working on this year? 6 months, 3 years, 5 years. And so a versatility matrix for our different positions. As you fill in boxes, you show proficiency in that task. And again, we have where you're learning, you can become a trainer. This all culminates together for our training department. So we can see any white boxes means we don't have expertise in that lane. So then how do we focus on maybe those pieces of training? This is great because then we can start to share versatility matrix, publish that as a company. So I'm an apprentice, maybe I'm a project coordinator, maybe an estimator. I could start looking at what are the skill sets for the other jobs and have conversations about maybe moving within the company. To finish on a positive note, I keep talking about, I'm so excited that we're being talked about as a key industry. Right? Are you guys excited? It's been a long road of many of us working at this, and construction's like, nope, not interested in talking to you. Don't want you in front of our students. Yeah. You have great opportunities. We'll get with you later. And now being brought into the fold, being talked about at the federal level, at the state level. Wall Street Journal had a great article really promoting the trades and the opportunity and showing the growth. What was interesting is we see, as we're pushing back into the high schools and teaching, we're seeing a younger age coming into all of our trades. So with that, I keep going back to this generational data, and I'll share a little bit more, and I have a takeaway on that. Knowing this mix of generations that we're working with, and by 2030, 70% of our workforce will be millennials and Gen Zs. So the more we have to adjust a bit in how we onboard them and how we train and how we communicate. So I think this is great news for us, but it does push us to operate a little bit differently and think out of the box.
Great stuff. That's awesome, Carla. Thank you for sharing that. Here's the part that I've noticed in the industry is you've got several organizations that have the ability and the resources and the time and the passion to put the university level together, like the Wayfield University, or pick one of the company's names and put the university behind it. What happens is there's a lot of companies that don't have that ability because they're waking up and they got the pressure of either getting their next job or building their next job, and so but they still have those same needs on a day-to-day basis to help train, to retain their people, right? And so one of the things that we're noticing with how we're fitting into the niche of the marketplace is we'll take and we'll help those companies take that lift off of them, because I've been there myself where it's like I'll ask my team, hey, you need to do a confirming RFI on that and get that so that it's part of our contract, and they're like, they just look like you're speaking a completely different language. And so the idea with what we provide is the core knowledge to get up to like 75 to 85%, and then the company can put their fingerprints on it, so it becomes a cultural thing. So you don't have to start from ground zero with like, okay, this is an RFI, or these are meeting minutes, or this is the strategy behind the meeting minutes. This is, what we like to, when we talk about RFIs, we like to make it sound like if you're following a tree, right? And the tree's got power lines on one side, a house on the other, and the neighbor's house, and it can fall one way. The RFI writing has a strategy to it. It has a process to it so that you can, like a tree, you fall it in that one direction. You want the RFI, you want it to get answered in that direction. And so that's where a company's like, oh, thank goodness someone's explaining the strategy behind writing an RFI. It's not the keystrokes of how to write it in Procore. You can spend that 15% time on your own where you fire up your own software and run them through that. It's that other part that you just don't have time because you're out building projects or you're focused on getting that next project. So it's just a way. Thank goodness there's companies, and thank goodness there's parents that are thinking construction's pretty cool, and there's processes, and there's ways that you can have those credits that you talked about. That's so awesome. But if somebody's missed all that and they're in the industry and they had a great attitude and you want to train them to retain them, there's another way too to keep them. And so that was the point.
I think there's sometimes a misnomer that you have to make that decision before you enter the industry, and that's your last opportunity for education. And if you miss the boat, like, sorry, you're out of luck. You're stuck being a sign holder for the rest of your career. And I love what Carla showed with Project Scale, and that's a huge statewide effort to try to stack those credentials. That way, if somebody decides to go get educated later on in their career, that they can see that pathway and they can start to even have those conversations with mom and dad at the dinner table of, hey, look, I'm going to be debt free, in 4 years while others are accruing debt, or, hey, I could go to school later. And it shows that visibility, which I think is really cool. So thanks for sharing about Project Scale. So changing tracks a little bit, talking about our next generation some more. We are in a very digital world, very AI heavy, work from home, all sorts of things. And we're an industry that starts at 6 a.m. and, has a maybe a little bit different approach, or so we think. So talk to me about what assumptions or limiting beliefs we may have as an industry about our next generation.
Talking about all these different mixes of generation, next generation could be a whole nother discussion. There's a lot there. We have 4 really active generations right now in the workplace. And like I said, we're going to drop the baby boomers and Gen Xers as they move into leadership retirement. And then we're going to have majority millennials and Gen Zs. Purdue Global has an awesome, if you go to their site, they have a lot of great research around all the generations, the influencers of how they grew up, how they communicate, text communication, what they expect of their manager. And we have some really unique things of the different generations. Gen X has the highest, 55% of startups were by Gen Xers, highest data point that we've seen out of any generation. When you look then at the next run of millennials, they are a high percentage of them live at home into their 30s. That's a new demographic. And then you get into the Gen Zs, our youngest generation coming into the workforce. I mentioned how 80% of them want government and business to pay for their education. They also want frequent touch points with their manager. So they are going to want a lot of communication. But it goes through all the, how you text, you communicate, you talk, you write. There's a lot of great stuff. I have some printouts in the back corner if anybody wants them. But the more, again, we understand about these generations, the better. Deloitte and Fortune also do great research on these upcoming generations. Their data shows those 2 generations are coming into the workforce looking for 3 things. A good paying job, flexibility, which we don't have a lot of in construction. What does that look like in the future? And the third thing is opportunity to train. So they like this whole mentorship thing we're talking about, matching people up and having this one-on-one training or some formalized part of training. The 3 things those 2 generations say that they will leave an employer for is mental health, burnout, and pay. And it's like, okay, those aren't, okay, I kind of get where you're coming from, but no one would have listed those mental health and burnout 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So these different expectations, our generations are coming in. They are looking for a sense of belonging. They're looking to be part of something. So sometimes we're like, gosh, I feel like I have to lay out all these steps and 1 and 2 and stackable and all these commitments and what it's going to look like in the future and all the pay and benefits. And it's like, yes, because they're trying to figure out where they can be part of something. And I'll end on this. The youngest generation coming in are, I always have to think about all of the names, millennials. They are self-reported the loneliest generation we've had to date. So over 55% of them state that they're lonely. Some of that is some of the technology generation. Some of it's how they grew up in COVID. So when you start doing the research on these different folks we're bringing into our industry, they are needing different things, expecting different things. So I think the more we're educated about it, the better we communicate, and the better we've got great things to talk about. We have great career paths. We have good people. We have all this training, right? We just need to continue to work as an industry to advocate for it.
So I wanted to flip that question a little bit around and say the limiting belief that we hold on the next generation. I kind of want to put that on my generation. I'm a Gen Xer, and I think it's. I want to say, what are the limiting beliefs that we have if we're going to train? Because I have some of the subject matter experts. The awesome part is it's really cross generational. So I've been talking about more of the seasoned, that are riding off into the sunset, so to speak. But the idea is also that we bring in young professionals that have succeeded early in their career, where they have maybe 10 years experience, so they can kind of visualize themselves in the shoes of that professional that's coming in and talking as a subject matter expert. But the limiting belief is that I need to be in a classroom to teach my content face to face. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that. I like that. I like that format probably as much as anybody. But if we can only teach to 5 people or 10 people versus if we could teach to 20 or 30 or 50 people in a different format, shouldn't we embrace that? And so I think that's a limiting belief. And then it goes to, okay, if I teach it in a we call a live learning lab or a Zoom room kind of an environment, can I teach to a screen that a monitor that they have their cameras turned off? And so I'm like, okay, well, let's see. Are we asking that to make us feel better or to make them feel better? And so, we're like, well, the person could be on a chairlift and not be engaged in the content. And it's like, okay, well, I could see that, but I think what I've noticed is that it's kind of an exception and not the rule. What we're able to do is, if you can get over that limiting belief that you have to teach in a classroom and you have to teach with everybody's camera on, we are getting engaging content out there. We are able to move the needle. We are getting ratings back where we're making a difference through that. And so I kind of flip that around that question around a little bit, just to kind of keep us on our toes. I think that's what I had on that.
Mike? Okay.
Yeah, so going through the next question, how are we accurately portraying the work ethic and demands of our industry while still attracting a generation that may prioritize something different? So, Alicia kind of talked about coming in early in the morning, and if you have a job that's going and there's overtime or it's weekend work or something goes wrong, and how do we portray what we're doing and what our industry is really like, and not sugarcoating it and not just trying to get somebody in the door? Is there ways that we can show that that's important and there's a lot of dignity and a lot of fun in what our industry really is, but what it really looks like?
I think, as I listen to Carlin talk about the generations, there's just a lot of that's a lot of stuff for me. And I look at the people, and I think people self-select into this industry, and the majority of those people want to stay in the industry. But trying to keep them engaged and based on a bunch of generational stuff, it's a company fit. It's a people and company fit, and I don't think you can lump the generations into one. That's just me.
I guess I'm definitely still like building. I'm still in the dirt to a certain extent. So while I can still do it, I like to show that to the people that I'm working with. And if I'm doing it, they're going to follow me. They're not going to sit in the trailer, right? They're going to be out there working with me. And I think they gain confidence, knowledge, working alongside me that they can carry forward. Team goal that we're going to get this done, and they're part of a bigger cause to do well on this project, succeed, and we get a lot of repeat work, right? We're going to go to the next client. So that's where I see it more from in the dirt side, I guess.
And what Scott's saying too, without saying it, is or knowing it. I mean, he has those. There's goals. There's purpose. There's drive in what to do, and obviously leading by example. People buy into that you're not above it and that you're willing to get dirty with them and showing them. So I think it's great that, yeah, you're doing and creating that purpose for them, that's what that generation and all of us are looking to fill, you know, in what we're doing.
I think too, to piggyback off of what Scott is saying, is sometimes it's about the physicality of what we do, that we build very cool things that gets people excited and interested in our industry, because they are going to gravitate towards what they see. And if you ask them, working with students saying, you know, hey, what jobs are there in construction? They oftentimes can't always articulate all of them because construction's so broad, and they're not thinking about, oh yeah, there was a ceiling partition person that came up and did that. But before that, there was a welder that welded the structure. And before that, you know, there was a plumber laying pipe underground underneath this building. And they don't always think about all of those pieces. So that's where I think Construction Con's done a really great job of trying to provide those avenues for those students to see how vast the industry is, but also to experience tactile what it is that we do, and to see their faces light up when they have, you know, welded at Epic's booth, or they operated the crane outside, or those sorts of things has been really humbling, I think, for also the people doing the work as well, because I think sometimes we forget how cool our jobs are, and so to experience it through students is really gratifying. CSU, there's Anna, does a high school camp over the summer for girls. Shameless plug, the application's open until March 1st. Oh, she's got flyers. But the students get to come in and they have a lab portion where they are wiring lamps and then pour a little concrete base. And when they plug that lamp in and it works, these girls' faces are like, I harnessed electricity. Like, that's what we need to be showing our students as well, of like, yes, that may be what you're doing for a time in your career. And then look at all these other avenues and opportunities throughout the industry. I plugged a lot of things right there. All right, so our last question, and then we can open up for audience questions. Carla showed us some pretty amazing slides about all the things that Wayfield Group is doing to help get that knowledge transfer throughout somebody's career with their Wayfield University and with their versatility matrix and all these things. It's incredible the work that they've done. And we also want to recognize that has taken years, I'm sure, for you guys to do. Not every company has that resource or may feel like they have that timeline. So what's one thing that a company can do to start that process today or to capture that knowledge today?
I'll start and then we can go down the line. Like simple stuff, again, of like, how do you replicate if you have somebody leaving and have all this knowledge so they're not just one-on-one all the time? How do you pull together and document some of what they do, turn it into a training? How do you make a simple list of your employees and who are they, each person mentoring and training and feeding into that can develop into your next leaders, and start talking about these next steps, because it makes connection, it creates community, it's a binding culture. So some of it's really simple. Again, the bigger you get and some of the things our next generation wants from us will push you to do more, I think, and to document more and formalize more as far as training. But it's really a simple concept. We're doing it. Just how do you document it and figure out how to scale it?
Yeah, in my 35-year career, you know, we've been talking about this labor shortage for probably half of it, maybe 2/3 of it, so 20 years. And so I think I would just say, you know, change your mindset. You know, I think some companies have that mindset that you might call it a scarcity mindset, or, you know, if I train that person, they're going to leave. Or, you know, you can talk yourself into a lot of things that probably aren't reality. Because I think at the end of the day, your employees really feel valued when you invest in them. If you kind of put them on that list, like Carla said, and you start working with them through some sort of a career path. And so, you know, some of those things You heard the word micro credentialing. Think of it like badging. Think of it like if you want like a video game. So it's like you want to level up. So you're wanting them to feel like they're making progress in their career and they're leveling up. And it doesn't necessarily always translate to more dollars on their paycheck every week. It can feel like just being valued and belonging and celebration. So there's other ways. So I guess if there's one thing is just stop waiting and start training is what I would say is just jump in, whatever kind of class it is from wherever for whoever. There's don't talk yourself out of it. I think would be my advice.
Yeah, and from my side of the world, I guess, at FCI, I'm just planning on, I haven't been here a long time, but there's a lot of young guys, some that I've worked with, some that I know that are looking for some of my expertise. So I'm planning on spending more time with them to, just give them another set of eyes and ramp them up to what they can be, the goods and bads of their project, what they can work on. And I think a lot of, at least some of the younger people I talk to are just looking for me to help them with I think someone was talking about it earlier, just the general process of how things should go together and start to finish. And they're just asking general questions, which are easy for me to answer. So that's what, from my side, I plan on expressing before I get out of here.
I think we're always looking for different positions in our companies. I was looking for a president and had to fill that position. There wasn't a playbook for that. From a training standpoint, a lot of what we do for our field force is lean on our manufacturers, our suppliers, those kind of people for the training we do that's product specific. It's hard when, I think Dan said it earlier, you're getting to work at 6 a.m. and you need to go, guys want to get their hours. They don't want to spend a lot of time training. So you've got to figure out how to get the training in. I think about, all the different people we have to hire for and the transitions that'll come through all that. And as a roofer, we're not good at training. I look at plumbers and electricians at the end, and they've got their apprenticeship programs, and there is no playbook in roofing for what we need to do to train. So I wondered when Dan said he's just going to teach somebody how to write an RFI, I'm sitting here thinking 30 years in this industry, and I never learned how to write an RFI. So there's resources to go get what we need to get. We just have to find them and put them to use.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of round it out too, as far as just in our business, as we've been kind of talking about it, it's definitely looking at it and saying, identifying who are those that are aging out and what is their purpose and how do we extract. And there's some flexibility and some role changes as far as this is what they were good at, but they want to slow down, and creating some positions. If there was a salesman that now wants to do more BD and help with that, and if you have an older foreman that goes into some QC, but there's some training that's there. And so I think understanding what your workforce looks like and then identifying those people and then using and putting them in a position to train and to help and to share their knowledge and buy in on their terms as well as yours. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, panelists. We're going to open it up for some questions from anyone in the audience. You're next.
First off, thank you very much. But this is a question to go right down the line. What would you tell your younger self to make it clear that there's a great, bright future in the construction industry?
That path wasn't clear when I was younger. So again, that's why I've been so passionate about Project Scale and so many companies and associations I can see in the room have been part of that, of how do we work as an industry and have that message statewide, school side, talking to other industries that like we're a key industry. And it takes all of us to be part of that and get the youth excited about the opportunities. There's so much going on. So I love to talk about our industry, but I look back and I had no clue. I went to CSU. I was not in the construction management program. I didn't have a lot of visibility into it from my school into college or out of college. I just happenstance and getting recruited into a company where I started touching it.
I think I'd tell my younger self that don't compare your path with anybody else's path is one thing I would give advice to my younger self. The other thing is just don't compare to anyone else, but then compare and try to improve from the best version of yourself. So you just I don't know if we're recording this, but I guess I'll go down on record. So here's what I would like to say is. I think, we all suck a little bit, and so what I like to think of is if we just suck a little less than yesterday, it'll help us get to where we want to at the end of the day. So I don't mean that to offend anybody, but that's kind of a simple way that burned into my brain. So.
Yeah, I didn't have I don't think, a clear path on where I was headed or telling younger people, but I think I was at some point telling a lot of people, you can be whatever you want to be, right? I mean, you just got to work hard and show, some people started off with labor, some had a degree at CSU, whatever, but it doesn't matter in the end, right? Your drive and your commitment and, you can do whatever you want to in this industry. And so, maybe expressing that more, to the younger generation that you really can do whatever you want to be if you work hard at it. So,
I think relationships. I think relationships are the one thing that get left behind or we don't talk enough about in construction. And building relationships and building strong relationships with partners makes all of us stronger. So I would have focused more on some relationships probably early on. We do a good job of that now, but I would definitely say that that's a missing piece that doesn't get talked about a lot.
Awesome. All right, and we'll do one more. Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah.
It's on, okay. It's not much questions, but it's 2 comments. It's food for thought for all the attendees. If we start, and I have been asking, if we start putting together a retirement package for people to say, you can be a trainer, right? These are the opportunities. I've seen people saying, I'm going to retire 6 months later. I'm like, I cannot retire. My wife kicked me out of the house, or my spouse kicked me out of the house. I have to do something. Project Scales, high schools, Construction Education Foundation, which I'm part of, we're looking for those trainers. And it's people saying, how do I teach? We have to also train the trainer. So it's all those opportunities that we're looking for, that skill that you guys have, that you can pass to the young generation. And the second thought, and people that know me know that I don't have much of a filter. Yeah. We saw that the diversity and representation, the issue why we don't have more people of color or women saying, I need to leave this industry, there's lack of representation. Where are we seeing our leaders, people of color? And I know people can tell me, get off with the DI. No, it's about diversity in people. So if we want to track and be open to this representation, we have to open the opportunity, mentorship, allow them to fail, give them the opportunity to be managers, supervisors, because that's what it's going to look. Whether you like it or not, we're having more people, but they don't see that representation. They look at the website, the board, and no offense to the panel, but we look the same, right? So how we can say, women, come, it's a great career when they don't see themselves as a manager. And in your question, what would tell ourselves for a great career? Not everybody had a great career in construction. That's what they have left because they have not found that support. And more of these students are the first-time generation going into college or going into this career, and their parents, they don't know how to help them navigate. So if you want to be that employer, and love, Carla, you have this, but for small businesses, they don't have this to put it together, but they want the talent. So let's start promoting this mentorship and how we can support people of diverse backgrounds, people that are trying to get more opportunities to be into that manager, supervisor, or whatever they look success for them, and they can start being word of mouth to advocate for our industry. Thank you.
Question for you. On your first part, are you offering a place for people to train, or is that a brainstorm? What do you?
We are both. We in Construction Education Foundation, we're trying to develop that train the trainer. And as an organization foundation with AGC, but we're open because we have a lot of schools that we're trying to work, and they have the students, but they don't have the teachers, right? So we have a superintendent, or we have even guest speakers. So I'm offering both. If somebody wants to brainstorm with me how to put together this train the trainer, because we have the talent, but you say, for superintendents, like, I go to interviews and I don't know how to talk to people, but we can help them teach their skills they have, and we should not let that talent, because they want to pass it along. So how we help them, so there are opportunities. So while we come together, smart people that we are, and put together that curriculum to train them, and companies put together a retirement plan, you can be a trainer, you can pass your skills, you can be a mentor, whatever. Let them have some opportunities for them to explore what they can do in this next phase that is not retirement, it's passing that knowledge. That answer your question?
Yeah, it does, and it's perfect in. I love the idea. Not all of us train very well, but having that opportunity and having a place for somebody to be able to go to pour into others is what is lacking, because we don't know where to go. So great, I love it.
I would like to connect, and a speaker, you can go to a school and tell the story, right? That's also what we need. Anna needs more speakers. All schools need more speakers, because we want to tell different perspectives, different stories, different paths of how we got to where we are now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, panelists. I'm curious to hear what you're noticing of people's willingness to step into leadership roles, and not just to step into them, but stay in them. Are you noticing anything or hesitancy for folks to step into those positions now?
You got anything, Scotty?
No, I definitely think some of the young guys I've worked with lately, one that I just worked with, kind of an assistant soup, but he was a soup. But he's running his own job right now, his first job by himself. Yeah, he wants to be that. He wants to move up. And I think a lot of the engineers that I see are, if we can express some of the stuff that we've all talked about today to them, this is where you can be, this is the timeline, and then I guess the company has to kind of follow through with that, right? I mean, you can't just throw them to the side or keep them in that position as a PE forever, right? I mean, we got to move them up at some point. So, yeah, I am seeing that interest, but I think we all got to keep that motivation going so that they stay in it and want to be involved.
I'll add a little bit. From my experience, it seems like it's that superintendent. You're talking about the project engineer to project manager, but what I've noticed is in the foreman to assistant super or super, usually that's an hourly versus a salary transition. And so what happens is when you get paid by the hour, you can really kind of make you're going to have to take a pay cut probably to go from a foreman at hourly, because you're really good at your job and you get asked to do so many things that you get a lot of extra overtime. But then when you go to a salary, I think we need to do a better job of making sure that they can see not just that transition period of whatever that is, a year or so, but they see what they're, kind of pull back a little bit and look at that from a higher vantage point to be able to see the benefit. Because I think that is a reality to somebody saying, gosh, I can't really, I'm feeding my family right now, but I don't know how to feed my family $15,000 less a year, and that's what I'm going to have to take to do that. And so I think we have to do a better job at realizing the reality of that for those foremen that we want to become supers, because I think that's a reality they're dealing with. So
We see kind of two lanes where we have individuals that come in, and some are very excited and they communicate what's next, and here's where I want to be, and they push in on those conversations and they want to be Scott. They want to be able to run work and do different jobs within the company. I see another lane where you see talent and they show up well, they're committed, they're doing great things, but maybe they're a little bit more shy about I'm not Scott yet, so I'm not going to press in on that conversation. And they need to be tapped on the shoulder a little bit, like, hey, we see potential, and you're doing this and this and this, and you're investing in yourself, and doing these whatever it is. And it's interesting. A lot of people are like, wow, you see that in me? You believe in me? Like, and so it's been fun to see people career path into leadership positions that, wow, what if we didn't tap them on the shoulder and have that conversation? So I think it goes both ways. We have to be advocating and listening. And then there's some people that come in and like they want to run off the cliff, and you got to have some reins because they'll go faster than they have talent for.
Yeah, leadership's hard. Leadership's scary. To her point, the right people have to come, and you have to identify the people that you want to lead. And leaders make companies great. And to scale a company, you need lots of leaders. So I don't see us having a problem with leaders or leadership, people wanting to, but I think it's a personality trait when you're comfortable and you don't want to try to get into it.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you again to the panel and the experience that they brought and their insights. So we appreciate everybody being here. I think from who we are. So again, how to connect, you can always get with, we have the newsletter that goes out, a lot of information there. Go to the website, connect with any of us. We'll have another all-partner meeting in May, so look out for that. We're excited, and it was a great day. Everybody drive safe, and thank you very much.
Good job, Scotty.